like a bird, like I'm a bird drying my wings from the humidity. Welcome, everybody, to Know You Tell It Left My Heart. I'm so excited for tonight's show. I'm extra excited for all of these new faces. Plenty of people are returning faces, but also a lot of new ones. I, of course, have to start with a little bit of the elevator speech just to make sure everybody knows what Know You Tell It is all about. We've been working with the 4 storytellers that you're going to meet tonight for the past month or so to develop their true tales on the page. And then tonight they're going to flip scripts and step into each other's life experience, culture, identity on stage. And also, this is our 3rd show working with the Greater Astoria Historical Society, which has been very exciting. And so a big part of that is, having these modern day true tales inspired by Queen's history, which is extra fun. You might notice a little bit of extra fun behind me, which I'm going to explain in a moment. But first, what I love about this space too is just having this intimate space, getting to see all of these faces. And I just know, having rehearsed all day yesterday with the storytellers, there's a lot of nerves in the room tonight, right? And I was thinking about that today, thinking about this idea of nervous and nervous energy, and I always thought of it before as something negative, this idea of anxiety, but what a privilege to be so excited about something, to be so invested in each other's stories, that we have these nerves running through our bodies, right? What I want everybody to do this is something I suggested everybody do yesterday. Maybe I just need to do it a little bit, but just everybody, the theme is Left My Heart, so open hand, open hearts. Just take 3 deep breaths together. A bunch of people in the room breathing, right? So great. I'm not asking you to join a cult. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. It just occurred to me that's being filmed. But thank you so much for that. And also, it's these 3 deep breaths in honor of our 3rd show at the Greater Astoria Historical Society. But this is the first time that we started with a public event. We kicked off a month ago with our Art Heart event at Sunnyside Arts that was open to the Queens community, where people came in and we just all generated personal stories and traded stories with each other inspired by the history and music of Tony Bennett. And you might have noticed on your seats there, I've left some pictures. Thank you to Deanne, who supplies some of these pictures. Tony Bennett's from Astoria. You can even see there's some pictures of his home and different performances. And also, we've distributed throughout the audience, there's an imaginary interview that Bob Singleton of the Greater Astoria Historical Society, it's always such a fun name to say, he put together this imaginary interview with Tony Bennett when he passed away last summer, and I was really struck by it, and it was one of the things that gave me the idea to do this show, right? Learning about this Queens native and this community that we all share. We read the interview aloud as part of the Art Heart event, and just kind of did a reflection exercise to think about, what we got out of it, what it resonated with us. And here are 3 highlights from when we read the interview aloud and kind of what came up in our discussion. Despite seeing all of the horrors of World War II, he didn't have any bitterness or regret, but walked forward. He made music for everyone, not just the young. I want adult music. You need to take care of yourself and your health to be an artist. This is my favorite comment. If we are dead, we can't do anything. So I emailed out today the online program, and there's a link to learn more about the Art Heart event. You can read, if you don't happen to have one at your table, the imaginary interview. And then also, so what we did is it inspired personal stories. We traded the stories with each other, and then the storyteller that you're going to meet tonight, Zach Rothman-Hicks, he co-facilitated the workshop with me, and we created these beautiful portraits, and you can check them out more in intermission. How we made them is with our story partner, we traced each other's faces, but then also incorporated parts of the story in the portrait. And what's exciting for me, for these, especially just the mechanics of getting them up earlier and that it's working, but also that the fact that the 4 storytellers that you're going to meet tonight, those stories started there, right, in this little workshop in May. And now we've been working together. We've done a couple story meetings over Zoom. They've been working with the story coaches that you're going to meet. And then yesterday they flipped scripts, and I rehearsed with everybody. And we're all in on it together, right? With the breathing, we'll get to experience it together tonight. And I've said so much information. So if you want to know more about anything that I've talked about, again, knowyoutellit.com. The online program is there. You can learn about all these great things. I'm also available at intermission to if you have any questions about anything. But the teacher in me wanted you to also experience a little bit of the workshop that we did. So we handed everybody these I Left My Heart graphic organizers, if you will, fill in the blanks. And what I wanted to do is, just like we did in the workshop, I'm going to invite storyteller Carl M. Banks and workshop participant Ricky Richards to come up. And Carl is he's going to be kind enough to play Tony Bennett's signature song for us. And while you're listening to I Left My Heart in San Francisco, go ahead and fill in the blanks. See if it pops up any story ideas. We've got a couple extra pens floating around. Just like I say in my writing classes, totally optional share at the end. Like this is just for you. And I will get out of the way so that we can hear the performance. La da da da, la da 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 da, do da 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 da. The loveliness of Paris seems somehow sadly gray. The glory that was Rome is of another day.
I've been terribly alone and forgotten in Manhattan, so I'm going
to my city by the bay. I left my heart in San Francisco, high on a hill. It calls to me to be where little cable cars climb halfway up to the stars. The morning fog will chill the air. I don't care, my love waits there in San Francisco, above the blue, an endless sea. When I come home to you, San Francisco, your golden sun will shine on me. To be where little cable cars climb halfway up to the stars. The morning fall chills the air. I don't care, my love waits there in San Francisco, above the blue and endless sea. When I come home to you, San Francisco, your golden sun will shine on me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carl and Ricky. That was beautiful. I was like, it's so funny because I'm like involved in almost everything, but that part I didn't, get to hear rehearsal or anything, so it just gave me chills. Does anyone want to share? I see some, I teach a monthly sip and scribe. We have one coming up Friday, which is like a creative writing happy hour that I do at Sunnyside Arts. I see some students here. Lakshmi. Is there anyone that wants to share? Rosalie? You don't have to. Or what was it like? And so we always do that instead, right? Like instead of doing exactly what you wrote, what was it like just trying to fill in the blanks while you listen to a song?
I just tried to think of the weirdest things I could.
Thank you.
Random places.
Nice. I'm totally in teacher mode right now. Just like earlier when I said I wouldn't continue until you all stopped talking when we were rehearsing. Great. Anyone? Oh, yes, Mitch.
I wrote Cass's Delicatessen.
Oh, nice. I lost my heart in Cass's Delicatessen. I like it. Yes.
I'm going to say Astoria because I used to live here and I really miss the neighborhood.
Oh, well, we're so glad that you're here tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I left my heart in Astoria.
Yeah.
Sydney. Sydney's like, you didn't give me a pen.
Oh, no. So I can't answer.
Yeah, so I can't answer. Wow, thanks so much. Last call. Anyone else want to share or what it was like or what do you imagine? Yes, Mary.
I left my heart in the Bronx and I left it there for way too long.
Ooh, I left my heart in the Bronx and I left it there for way too long. Nice. This makes me excited to hear the stories, right? What we all came here to hear tonight. Our first set of storytellers sitting over here, so just stand for a moment, don't move yet. But January and Catherine, stand up, because before you come up, I'm going to welcome our beautiful story coach, Pachenda Bao. As you can probably tell, Know You Tell It takes a village, and when we were doing the story workshops over Zoom, in between the sessions too, Pachenda Bao and Tim Lindner, who you meet in the second half, provided personal feedback. And then also tonight, since we all rehearsed with each other individually yesterday, tonight is also the first time that the storyteller is hearing their story being performed in front of the audience because they weren't part of rehearsals. So we do a very fun thing, at least it's fun for me. We like to put them right up on stage. So January, if you want to come up, and Catherine just kind of wait in the wings. We're going to ask January to sit here in the hot seat, because Chenda has prepared for her a little Q&A so that we can get to know January, who's the author of tonight's first story, before we hear her partner perform it. And I've asked Chenda to prepare one personal question, which I didn't make. I'm letting go of the reins a little bit. I didn't make her run it by me. So we'll all find out together what that is. And then also, after the intermission, we're going to hear Bob talk more about the imaginary interview with Tony Bennett. But I took some of the questions from that interview and I put them in my #flawless_fabulous cup there, which is my prompt cup when I teach. And so the second question you'll pull out of the cup. So I will get out of the way while they're doing the Q&A so that Catherine can come up and get ready at the music stand.
I'm so excited to talk to you, January. I was looking at some of your work, and you do make visual art with video and drawing and photography. And we've chatted a little bit about being a mother and how that has played into your art making. And so I just was kind of curious, like how discipline or the idea of discipline has shifted as you've been making your art and raising your child, and just kind of curious about it.
I do make art when I can.
Yeah.
Do what I can. So it's you cannot really do it daily. But when I can do it and I have a deadline, then that's really helping me to push it forward. So either it's a deadline for the exhibitions or for grant applications. So that's been really helping me.
Oh, great.
To have deadline.
Deadlines, yeah. Deadlines are really key. All right, let's open up the Flawless. And I have, a secret question. Okay. As you grow with experience, how does your art, and you for that matter, evolve and change over time?
I can go on for hours.
Yeah, I know, right?
So, my work really is reflective of my personal life. So but a lot of times it has to do, even before I became a mother, I think I was always looking for the relationship. My work is about relationships between individuals and then their environments. So yes, but the context has changed. I was more focused on individual, my identity as an individual, but now more of a relationship with my child, and also just the physical environments that we are living in.
Right. Great. Thank you. And now here is Mother's Dream.
That was one question. There are more questions?
No, I just have to ask you one question. No more. Yeah. I know. I do have a lot of questions actually, but I'll leave it. Here is Mother's Dream by January Yoon Cho, performed by Kapphahn.
Mother's Dream. The happiest memories of my childhood were the tantalizing arrays of colors in my set of crepes, oil pastels in Korean. The endless freedom I found in the blank pages of my sketch pad, my dirty hands with oil pastel residue caught in the fingernails. Whenever someone asks, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I would answer, "An artist," without hesitation. I even brought home awards for art from school, but Mom thought they were given to everyone as encouragement. Then she recalled none of my younger siblings had brought home the same awards. I grew up in Seoul, South Korea, with my self-made physician parents. They were the Korean War generation, the conflict that killed 3 million people. My dad's side of the family left their home behind in North Korea and moved to the South during the war. My mom lost her mother to cancer a couple years after the war, at the age 11. This loss at such a young age left a mark on her heart and inspired her to become a doctor. My parents worked hard, nearly 7 days a week when I was young. They wanted to give their 4 children the life they had never had. I was a super duper introverted child who loved to draw and read alone. In the 80s, elementary schools there, each classroom held 60 kids. I was one of the youngest and quietest in the class. I spent a lot of time getting lost in my own inner world. My mom, on the other hand, loved singing out loud. Classical music was always playing in her office and in her car. She would sing along to music while driving and even sang at her alumni meetings. As a child, she wanted music lessons, but her family couldn't afford it. So she passed down that dream to me, her first child. And that was when the trouble began. When I was about 5, my mom bought me an upright, shiny black piano. I was curious about this new, intimidating box. It looked huge and impersonal. It had no exciting colors like the set of crepes I loved. When I opened the black lid, there were evenly shaped black and white keys. When I pressed down on them, it made noises. Soon after, Mom found a piano teacher for me. Unfortunately, the teacher failed to explain the relationship between the notes on the sheet music and the keys on the piano. Instead, she simply instructed me to press the keys according to the signed numbers for each finger. Right thumb represented the number 1 key, hits for do. The right index finger representing number 2 key, hits for re, and so on. A few months later, I still couldn't play notes without numbers written on. The lessons were boring, and I avoided practice. "You are so lucky to own a piano," said the teacher and Mom. The teacher mentioned her student didn't own a piano at home and had to practice on a piece of paper with hand-drawn keys. However, I hated practicing, hitting the meaningless numbered keys and refused to do so. I will give away the piano to someone who can't afford it, Mom threatened. I could care less. After much crying and resistance from me and yelling from Mom, she finally stopped the lessons. But you see, my mom is no quitter. A year or two later, she enrolled me in after-school piano classes. By then, I was more mature and had learned how to read music and follow instructions. Although I wasn't in love with it, I kept it up until 3rd grade when we moved to a new neighborhood. By this time, Mom seemed to ease up on the pressure to become a classical musician. I practiced in piano class mostly, and Mom's busy work took her attention away from it. One day, my parents bought a turntable record player. Mom pulled out a vinyl album that had been collecting dust in the closet. She placed the round record on the turntable, and beautiful, heart-wrenching, deep sounds flowed from the speakers. It was then that I learned about this instrument called the cello. Unlike the piano, a percussion instrument, the notes delivered by this string instrument felt more emotionally gripping. The music was Franz Schubert's Arpeggione Cello Sonata, performed by Rostropovich, who later became my favorite cellist. Mom shared a special memory with me about this album. Years before, Mom had a patient, a young woman in her 20s, who sadly passed away from terminal cancer at the hospital. Her patient's best friend gave Mom this album as a token of gratitude for her dedication and care. My mom, who had lost her mother to cancer, kept the album throughout all the ensuing years. And that's how I met the cello for the first time when I was around 9. As I mentioned before, my mom is no quitter. I started playing the cello around the age of 10. Mom sent me to an art school in the Department of Music so that I could train as a cellist. This meant a minimum of 5 hours of practice a day on non-school days, all weekends, holidays, and school breaks, meaning numerous auditions, school orchestra, concerts, competitions, and winning a medal. Meaning no more time for art making, meaning no more time for family skiing trips and summer beach vacations. I would stay at home with my grandparents to practice. My little sister would say it was a boring trip when she returned home to make me feel better, but I still felt like I missed out on a lot. My parents were proud to see me on stage playing the cello in my pretty dress. I set on going to one of the top colleges as a music major. But every now and then, I wondered, what if I studied art instead of music? At 16, I hit a slump. There is a saying in the classical music world, if you miss 1 day of practice, you know it. If you miss 2 days of practice, people around you know it. If you miss 3 days of practice, your audience knows it. I was tired of the rigid daily routines. I just wanted a normal life, like everyone else. I imagined the freedom of going out just for a day or traveling without worrying about practice. Playing sports would be nice, I thought, which was not recommended because of the potential for hand injuries. Not that I like sports, but the freedom was what mattered. Resentment towards a confined life started to build up. Dark clouds fiercely spread throughout my entire being, all those sacrifices of my childhood. I had missed out on so many big and little moments that other kids got to have regularly, like having play dates or joining the family doing mundane things. I felt so deeply deprived. Where was pure joy? Like when I was with my colorful set of crayons as a young child, fingers stained with oil pastels instead of calloused from practicing the cello. I recall delight in creating something new and getting lost in time while doing so. No one had ever forced me to make art. I did it out of love. It felt much more freeing than to have to follow the pre-written notes to play, and that freedom called to me. Announcing that I would quit playing the cello and become a visual artist was a huge shock to my parents. It was an unthinkable thing to my mom, who was no quitter. All that time, effort, and money can't go to waste, she insisted. Mom also had a particular picture of artists in her mind, unlike the elegant classical musicians on stage. All artists were smokers. In ripped jeans with unkempt hair, regurgitating agony. My dad wouldn't allow it either. He used to say, dig one well, a Korean expression for focusing on one path to success. My desire to choose my own future became quite intense. Though I had always been a pretty good student, I stopped practicing and started to come up with excuses to skip lessons. I became really depressed and hardly ate. This went on for months. Do whatever you want, shouted my dad, finally. Ironically, the very last piece I played as a music major was the Arpeggione Cello Sonata by Franz Schubert, the same piece of music that introduced me to the cello years ago. Eventually, I transferred as a high school junior to another art school, Walnut Hill School in the United States, but in the Department of Visual Art this time. Mom had learned about this school through her friend's daughter who was already in the program. This is where I prepared an art portfolio for art college applications. In my freshman year at the Rhode Island School of Design, I felt like I had finally found my people. I encountered a lot of introverted daydreamers like myself who could deeply focus on making art quietly for hours. The program was intense, but I felt so free. I could breathe. During my undergraduate years, I hopped around between majors trying to figure out what I really wanted to be. Upon graduation, I started out as a graphic designer, and after graduate school, I transitioned into fine art. Sometimes I find myself missing the cello. I've tried to play now and then for fun, but my busy life often interferes. Over 3 decades later, I still have a reoccurring nightmare of forgetting the notes during a recital on stage, or my accompanying pianist failing to show up for an audition. What did I gain from playing the cello? I learned self-discipline through the daily practice. I see the parallels between the structures of rhythm in both musical and visual compositions. In my video art pieces, working with audio comes more naturally because of my musical training. Despite the many ups and downs I've experienced as an artist, I know I made the right decision. But would Mom agree? For years, while I was working as a visual artist, Mom would leave me messages saying, I'm thinking of you today. FM 93.1 was playing such and such cello music you used to play. Referring to the classical radio station in South Korea, the only radio station Mom adhered to. In those messages, I could sense her grief over my quitting to become a classical musician. Last year, after dedicating half a century to caring for patients as an internist, Mom retired at the age of 79 due to declining health. Following her retirement, she joined a local women's chorus. She still loves singing and never misses her weekly practice sessions. She mentions, I'm the second oldest singer in the group. Last winter, Mom proudly sent me photos of herself with a big smile alongside the other singers in the chorus, all wearing matching red sweaters celebrating Christmas. Mom found her people, I thought. Mom is no quitter, after all. I've become a mother myself, balancing my responsibilities and limited time and space for my art. As my child grows more independent, I am beginning to reclaim more time for my artistic pursuits. A few weeks ago, I shared with Mom that I had been accepted into the Weir Farm National Historic Park Artist in Residency after a competitive process. I'll be away for a whole month this summer, leaving my family for the first time this long to focus on my art. At the residency, I'll experiment with adding color to my black and white silhouettes, my project's signature style. I will be reliving the blissful colors of crepage from my childhood once again. Mom was so happy for me. I knew she was proud of her daughter for being no quitter, pursuing what I love. I shouldn't have pushed you to become a cellist, said Mom. It should have been art.
Hi, Catherine. Great job.
Thank you.
That was really good. So you get to be in the hot seat. So I was thinking, you have had a lot of different experiences in the educational system, but now you're a teacher.
Yes.
And so I was just kind of wondering, like, how you think about your role as a teacher and how it informs your work.
Yes. I think simply the honest answer is oftentimes they come to me disillusioned and burnt out. And so I feel like my only job is to make them fall in love with learning and stories and reading. And yeah, it's as simple as that.
I love it. I love it. Okay, I'm going to see what kind of
What's going to come out?
secret. Okay. How do you approach your craft? How has it evolved over the years?
I think I'm more relaxed now, and trusting. I think in the beginning, whenever I wrote something, I thought, I'll never be able to do this again. It's so hard. I don't know if it'll ever happen again. Whereas now I trust that the story will happen, and I write blind. I don't know what's going to happen. So I just kind of see something in my head, and I kind of write around that thing, or I hear sounds, or I see something, or something, an image catches me, and then I write from there. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Switching it up. Here is Lopsided Star by Kapphahn, performed by January Yoon Cho.
Lopsided star. Open book, sharpens pencil, pink eraser. If I could flee, I would. Instead, I'm pinned to a chair like a dead mariposa, reeling from the high altitude of sounding out words. At 7 years old, I find no escape from the kitchen table in Lima, Peru, where we lived temporarily, and I attend an American school. How could strange shapes, curves, lines, dots, angles translate into meaning? How did Mama figure out in a foreign land I can't decipher words? She's taken things into her own hands, determined to teach me to read in English, not her first language. Awkwardly, I copy down letters, K's and Q's. It takes fierce concentration to control the wildness of my pencil. Why does speaking feel natural, but sounding out letters does not? How could I learn Spanish so quickly, but be unable to read my own language? I gaze longingly at the intricate black and white sketches. Cat springs off the page. Cat looks lazily at a fly. Cat pounces to catch rat in its mouth. Mama and I laugh. I'm in communion with images. Yet Mama brings me back to the torture of words again and again. I resist to pull the opposite direction, rip my hands from hers on a busy street of letters. She reaches for me. I get flustered, cry, raise my voices, retreat, says sulkily. In my silence, I cannot envision a reading life. I cannot see to the other side of this impossible act. Patiently, Mama redirects me to letters and sounds. Repeat after me, Katie, she says in her Croatian accent, and I'd follow her anywhere. We take breaks, and she, an artist, draws graceful stars and elegant stars. Awkwardly and slowly with my left hand, I draw misshapen stars, malnourished stars, lopsided stars. Years after she's gone, it occurs to me my Croatian mother's education was interrupted countless times. When you stop and start, you must be resourceful. When mortality knocks, you must find something to hang on to. World War II, uncertainty, violence, death, bombing, illness, being orphaned. That's when she learned to read. On her way home from school, she played, crawling over the rubble of houses, picking up a stick, waving it like a sword, staring at an unexploded bomb half sunken into the earth. Before she reached 9, both parents had died of tuberculosis. Afterward, her grandmother scrambled for a potato, a carrot, and rustling chicken. Baka watched the bones in her granddaughter's knees grow soft, rickets because of the prolonged vitamin D deficiency. When TB infiltrated my mom's girlhood lungs, instead of school in communist Yugoslavia, there were months in hospital, a year at a TB sanitarium, where she convalesced instead of studying. As a teenager, she longed to be back in art classes, sketching the human body with all its flaws and wonders, reading novels of Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, and Gogol in Russian, running up the steep stairs to Gornji Grad, and pushing open the doors to her high school besides Strossmayer Promenade. Stories had the power to save your soul, and she needed to teach her daughter to read, because it could be a refuge when all else was chaos. Her daughter would wander the landscapes of Dickens, Charlotte, Emily, and Jane, because these writers stood beside Mama as she, a 19-year-old, bravely took her first steps to escape Yugoslavia. Where my first school fails, Mama succeeds in teaching this lopsided star to read. At 11, I hear my father's uneven gait, long-socked feet coming up the shag green carpeted stairs of our Colorado home. Before I was born, he was stricken by polio, and stairs mean orchestrating balance and momentum. My 6'5" father leans upon his right leg, swings forward his left, one skin and a bone leg. Long face appears in my doorway. Katie, how are you feeling? I update him on my feverish condition, and he offers to read to me. I nod happily. He sits on the edge of my bed and flips open my side of the mountain. His tall frame hunches so he can better see pages. I follow the trail of his airy voice, and we run away with Sam to the Catskill Mountains as he survives alone, living in a hollowed-out hemlock tree, starting fires with flint and steel, making acorn pancakes, braving blizzards and hunters, befriending his neighbor, a weasel, the Baron, and training a falcon he names Frightful. My father can no longer climb Pacific Northwest mountains, the way he did before I was born, but he teaches me to love stories of nature, of adventure. He teaches me to stop and gaze at deer, mountain goats, marmots, bighorn sheep, and the white-tipped Rockies. I prop up on my elbow as Dad strays from the book, telling me how, as a park ranger, he rescued a bear cub stuck in a tree, picked blackberries and made homemade pies, and lived alone for months at a time in a fire lookout on a high rocky outcrop beside massive Mount Rainier. When he begins reading to me again, I lean back onto my pillow, gazing at the ceiling, imagining, frightful, the falcon circling overhead. After my mom's death from cancer when I'm 22, I make my third attempt at college at Hunter College in New York City. I invent rules so that I can learn like everyone else, so no one will know how much I am scrambling through grief to graduate, fulfilling my mom's dying wish. She never went to college, so I shoved my way through class by class, semester by semester, waitressing, paying rent, supporting myself while I go to school full time. College mindset. Get what you can get right. Don't be late. Turn everything in on time. Sacrifice sleep, food, hydration. Stay up all night. Keep up with the others. Who cares if you feel nauseous? When you make mistakes, yell at yourself so you don't do it again. When you feel utterly exhausted, when you've done absolutely everything you can, then, only then, are you really learning like others. At Hunter, I take my first creative writing class with a memoirist named Louise DeSalvo. She's a magical professor. She lifts our spirits and makes us feel like our stories matter, like we are real writers. In her class, for the first time, I write creatively. A year after I graduate, while working a low-paying job, I receive a phone call from a professor who tells me I've been accepted into the MFA Creative Writing Program at Columbia University. My first question is, are you sure you have the right, Kathleen? As I'm finishing grad school, I make a discovery that breaks apart my entire history. My voice cracks with emotion when, for the first time, I say out loud, I am dyslexic. After a long road of 10 schools, 2 colleges, and 1 university, dyslexia makes so much sense. The impossibility of learning to read at school, my mom teaching me at home, the 3rd grade teacher who tried to hold me back, the red D's and F's slashed across the English papers, the brick wall of mathematics, the dropping out of language classes, which I adored but couldn't keep up with, the shockingly low SAT score, the failing college placement tests, and the remedial college classes I barely passed. How had this unnamed secret that I've been carrying my whole life make me into me? Dana, the educational specialist who tested me, tells me, I think your mom, the way she fought for you, believed in you, really made a difference. Your parents supported you no matter what. They valued your gifts. Look at everything you've accomplished. Your mom would be proud of you. And then Dana apologizes for the Colorado public school system. They really failed you. I'm sorry. Teachers should have done more. They should have noticed. They should have helped. That's okay, Dana, I reassure her and add, I mean, what do you really learn in growing up school anyway? I spent an educational lifetime trying to cancel out what I learned. There couldn't possibly be something wrong with the way our educational system defined intelligence. The way school only highly valued memorization, testing, quick thinking, and high grades, right? I had no expectations of any school teaching me anything, and luckily, I had parents who never made me feel academically inadequate. I was an educational foreigner in an unchanging country where I would never gain citizenship. I couldn't conceive the way that there were so many others like me, unidentified learning trauma breaking over their lives, one classroom at a time. Years after my dyslexia discovery, I finished a manuscript about my mom called Immigrant Daughter, Stories You Never Told Me, a mother-daughter adventure love story that takes place in 7 countries. After overcoming so much, I'm sure I will have some luck finding a publisher. I want to be accepted by a publisher because surely then I'm convinced I will be a real writer. Once, at a literary agent speed dating event, while I'm pitching my manuscript, one agent mentions she loves stories of the heart. I exclaim, "Me too! I will send you some great podcasts." I email her links. A podcast about Isobel, a girl whose heart has raced up to 360 beats per minute. Summer, who can hear her heartbeat vibrate outside her body. Sarah, who at age 10 has a heart transplant and eventually meets the boy's family who gave her his heart. Jenna, who gives birth to a son, whose heart is on the right instead of the left side. Only later, much later, does it occur to me the agent meant love stories. Not beating heart stories. But maybe to this dyslexic, they're one and the same. Years and years of rejections come my way, oftentimes as form letters, but sometimes they say, "I enjoy the lyricism. I was completely swept up into your world. It was a page-turning read. It's an intelligent, imaginative project. It brought me to tears. We admire the temporal and geographical span of this deeply felt work. This is very daring and riveting." Towards the end of the letters, they'd also say, Unfortunately, we will not be pursuing. Unfortunately, we're going to pass. Unfortunately, we decide not to go ahead. Unfortunately, it didn't seem right for us. Unfortunately, your platform isn't strong enough. I'll be rooting for you. Best of luck. To say I internalized each rejection would be an understatement. I'm certain if I just fixed something in my manuscript, we'll find a place to belonging. I return to my computer over and over. Tenacity flies through my vein. I revise, research, labor over the proposal, a synopsis. I cut, restructure, reframe, and comb out narrative tangles. I submit to literary agents, book contests, and independent presses. I say fiercely, why don't you quit? Normal people would move on. Deep down, I know. Dyslexic grit and my mom. What's left when you've tried beyond trying? If I could just get my book beyond the literary deciders to real readers. I entered one final book contest, and I win! Along the Center for Fiction's Christopher Doheny Award, I received a contract with Audible to record my book. It seems like dyslexic destiny. This book will be published in an Audible format and read by its author, who had such a hard time learning to read. My father is gone by then, but I hear his voice cheering me on. For a year, I practiced with a wonderful coach to read my manuscript, and then mid-pandemic, I take the N train from Astoria to Midtown Studio, where I record Immigrant Daughter for Audible. Through the process of becoming a writer and writing teacher, I learned to walk alongside my dyslexic self. It turned out I didn't need to overcome her, fight her, or fix her. What I needed to do was honor how she dances with language. Recently, on Facebook post, a woman writer said that listening to book isn't real reading. It doesn't count, she informed, from an intellectual perch. And I say it counts. The way I learn matter. I matter. I place my ear to the cover of books, their vibration of sounding shifting my molecules. Words opening through the human voice.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, what a wonderful first half. I also wanted to note that one more big round of applause for Catherine in January, and we also we have Catherine's book here for sale. So having heard the journey to getting it, to winning it, to having it published, it's available. Tim is selling books in the back as we make Tim do all the things. And so we're going to take a 10-minute break. The bathroom is in the corner. And also, too, we love Scott and Rob here at Grove 34. Grab a drink, a snack, tip well, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. All right. Welcome back. So, like I said, this you really see how unique this story is. I thank you again, Zach, for co-leading the Art Heart event with me. Rosalie was asking me at the break. Yeah, the way it works is that we curate the 4 storytellers. So the 4 storytellers were kind enough to lend us the Saturday afternoon to participate in the event. But then we also opened it up for anyone that wanted to attend, and that's kind of how we find everybody at Know You Tell It too. So if you're interested in being part of a future show, just come speak to me afterwards. We're always looking together to put together groups of interesting people. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit more about. I keep talking about this imaginary interview with Tony Bennett that Bob created, and that we read out loud, and it was a big part of the workshop. So I wanted to invite Bob to come up and just let us know a little bit more about it and a little bit more about the history of this wonderful person.
You know, as a role of a historian is to try to record what happens so that in the future people can say, oh, that's what happened then. And we're not always accurate 100%, but we always try to do our best. One of the things that really gets our attention is when things are a little bit out of sync. We do a sketch every month on a person that's living or historical, whatever, and we always end it with a quote by them, because nothing really reveals a person, where they are, where they stand for, what they're about, like their own words. And the interesting thing is that, of course, Tony Bennett had passed on, and I looked up quotes of him, and instead of having 2 or 3 quotes, I had page after page after page. And when you're doing this kind of stuff, when you see something that you've never seen before, you focus your attention on it. So there's something here, there's something going on. And what we did is to look into Tony Bennett, and we found an entire dimension about this man that most people weren't aware of. And the fact is that he owed a lot of his career to the fact that he really worked within the milieu of black music. Who would ever know? A guy that would give a song, Left My Heart in San Francisco, was really somebody who collaborated with black African-American musicians. And so what we did is we looked into his background, we looked into his own words, and he admitted it. He says, more than anybody, I thank Count Basie for teaching me how to perform. I'm really a jazz singer. I loved Art Tatum. From him I found my technique. I respected Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole, and Frank Sinatra. Jazz is black music. It was invented by blacks in New Orleans. So to understand with this man why he was so unique is, I said, okay, fine. Well, let's take a look at this whole background that supposedly spawned, Tony Bennett. And so I looked into jazz poetry and discovered that it really started back in New Orleans in the late 1800s by African Americans. In the 50s, it still was around. It was the counterculture. The beat generation music was sort of a derivative of it. And today, with hip-hop music and poetry slams, that's also a part of this tradition. So I used examples throughout time to show the basis of what Tony Bennett was about. And you never think about this until you actually went into this and read some of this. And I have one example from the earliest examples, A Negro Speaks of Rivers by Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes tied to Tony Bennett, who knew? I know rivers, I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates where dawns were young. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans. And I've known rivers, ancient and dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? As early as the 50s, we found Tony Bennett performing with the Count Basie Orchestra. Again, part of this tradition. And one of the songs, the earliest hits of his, was There'll Never Be Another Like You. There'll be many other nights like this. I'll be standing here with someone new. There will be other songs to sing, another fall, another spring. But there will never be another you. In his own words, he says, I really respect the audience that much, and I try to give them the best interpretations of the best composers that have ever lived. This guy was not Dean Martin singing That's Amore or Perry Como singing Round and Round. This guy was pretty unique. Another example of Tony Bennett was one of his outstanding hits, A Good Life, recorded first in 1963. It's a good life to be free and explore the unknown, like the heartaches. When you learn, you must face them alone. Please remember, I still want you. And in case you wonder why, well, just wake up and kiss the good life goodbye. Became one of his staple songs and featured in 4 of his top-selling albums. He also named his 1998 autobiography after the song, The Good Life. And again, in his words, I really want the audience to have top quality all the time, never compromising, just doing the best songs that I could think of for the public. Now, he had a career that extended until, of course, recent times. And he also recorded with artists much younger than him who looked forward to actually recording an album with Tony Bennett. For example, Katie Lang performed the album was, I think, Duets, The Making of American Classic, Because of You. And a critic said, when the two of them were up there on the stage, he says, I love her voice, but when you see her live and she caresses every note that she so beautifully expresses, don't you just love language? And to put her with Tony Bennett, the music gods were on their game. Think about that. So one of the sad things, though, in music is that we do have wonderful tramps, we do have wonderful people that have fabulous skills, innate skills. But we also have tragedy in music, and of course, the Janis Joplins and what have you. And one of the sad examples of Tony's career was the unrealized potential of him wanting to work with Amy Winehouse. They have an album, Body and Soul, and the words on it is, my heart is sad and lonely, for you I sigh, for you, dear, only. Why haven't you seen it? All for you, body and soul. My life, a wreck. You're making. You know I'm yours for just the taking. I'd gladly surrender myself to you, body and soul. Are you pretending? It looks like the ending, unless I can have one more chance to prove, dear. Body and Soul won the Best Pop Duo Group Performance at the 54th Annual Grammy Awards in 2012. This win marked Bennett's 17th Grammy win and Winehouse's 6th and final Grammy win. His thoughts on Amy. She was one of the truest jazz singers I have ever heard. For me, she should be treated like Ella Fitzgerald, like Billie Holiday. She had the complete gift. If she had lived, I would have said, slow down. You're too important. Life teaches you really how to live if you can live long enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob Singleton, Executive Director of the Greater Astoria Historical Society. He's brought such an excellent additional layer and context and life to all of these fabulous shows that we've been putting together, kind of blending Queen's history and modern day true tales. As people have commented, the stories tonight are exceptionally vulnerable and written and traded with such open hearts. For those of you that did get a chance to receive the online program or look at our website, there is a content warning for the second half. One of the stories has a depiction of suicide, so if you need to take a moment or step outside, we also have resources in the program because of that, so I just wanted to let you know. But I am also honored and looking forward to hearing the second set of stories that we've worked so hard on. I'm going to call up story coach, Tim Lindner. Tim is also our social media guru and the savior of my sanity, as you can probably tell, since I'm constantly like, where's Tim? Tim, do this. Where's Tim? I need Tim. And then our first, our story, the first one that we're going to hear tonight was written by Zach, who I keep accolades, Rothman-Hicks. So if you want to come up into the hot seat, because Tim's going to do your Q&A, and then I'm going to get out of the way so Carl can come up and get ready at the mic.
Hello, Zach. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You feeling excited for the second half of the evening?
Very excited. A little nervous.
Okay.
Very, very excited.
It's gonna be fine. We're a good group. I know I'm a little scarier than Chenda. So I have a couple of questions for you. First, Kelly G mentioned that you helped facilitate the Art Heart workshop. And I understand you do a lot of community engagement, conversation-based, art-based programs. And in 2020, you started Gabbing with Gays. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what that is and the inception behind it and, why you got involved there.
Sure. So I was in grad school at the time in 2020 when the pandemic hit. I was in school for interactive performance, so it became a little bit ironic online. But I also, it was really a time where it was important for people to have space for sharing things and for listening. And so kind of taking that as the inspiration, it's kind of spun off into different community engagement projects. And at the core of it, it's always about using meditation and having space for people to listen to each other and then creating or doing something together. So in this case, we had our discussion and our meditation, and then from that, we symbolically created portraits of each other.
I love that. Thank you so much. And your imaginary Tony Bennett interview question. How do you approach your craft, and how has it evolved over the years?
So I guess originally, which maybe that's a weird word to use, but I'm a theater person. So I guess to me, I always the storytelling and kind of capturing that vulnerability that you need to have as a performer is something that I like to bring into it. I've become more multimedia and sort of trying to explore different disciplines, which has been really fun. But at the core, it's really about finding ways for people to listen to each other and to share something.
Great. All right, well, here is Head, Heart, and San Fran, written by Zach Rothman-Hicks and performed by Carl M. Banks.
There we were, having just arrived in our dimly lit, sad-looking hotel room in San Francisco, the jet lag just beginning to set into my mind and my body, when Chris said, "Matt is driving up from LA to join us." Huh? The room seemed to shrink until we were in a doll-sized cube, but we were still human-sized. It's not just that the physical space shrank, the oxygen molecules disappeared, leaving me emotionally gasping. I thought it would just be the two of us coming here. "What?" I asked. "Matt lives in LA, and he's coming to join us. It's gonna be fun." Aren't you excited? "I don't feel you're treating me with the respect and dignity I deserve. Don't you think you should have asked me first?" That's what I wish I had said, both then and many other times in my personal and professional life when something came up that made me uncomfortable. Instead, I said, "Oh, how fun. When is it coming?" "Tomorrow morning." "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go for a little walk." And I said, and then went for my first nervous pacing excursion as an adult. As I paced, I fretted. My mind raced with these thoughts. Why is Matt coming? Why didn't he tell me before? I thought this trip was just gonna be the two of us. What the fuck? Should I just go home? You can't go home, you idiot. It's 3,000 miles away. Why is it so hilly? What the fuck? Eventually, the physical exertion required from this nervous pacing forced me to calm down and return to the hotel room. Chris was happy as a clam, cool as a cucumber. I should give some context. The year was 2009. I was on vacation in San Francisco with Chris, who was my roommate, and I had been having sex with him for about 5 months at this point. In retrospect, this was not a good idea. But in the moment, it was awesome. The kinky side of me that I didn't know existed really loved hooking up behind our other roommate's back because there was this element of danger. What if she wakes up to use the bathroom and hears us fucking? I think part of me wanted to get caught. Also, did I mention? It was awesome. We would wait until our roommate was asleep and text or message each other on AIM. This is how the conversation sounded. Hey. Hey. What's up? Not much. Wanna hang out? And I would come over, trying to take my time to not look too desperate, even though it was literally 20 feet away. And then we would do the deed. What could possibly go wrong? I was very excited when Chris asked me if I wanted to go to San Francisco with him for his midwinter recess vacation. In my head, this was a sign things were moving along between us. We weren't just roommates who were having sex together in our apartment. We were traveling together across the country to have sex together in San Francisco, of all places. I'd never been in a relationship before, but I knew this was something that people did when they dated. So maybe we were dating, or maybe we would start dating, right? It was so clear and obvious that I saw no reason to discuss any of this with him, and instead said yes, bought my first plane ticket ever, and eagerly awaited what promised to be a good time. Fast forward back to San Francisco. The reason I felt weird about Matt coming is because he was also a friend who Chris had sex with from time to time. So the news that he would be showing up and sharing our bed with us was jarring, to say the least. How would you feel? To add insult to my emotional injury, Matt didn't even chip in for the room. It was not something we discussed, but what could I do? Express my thoughts and concerns? Ask to negotiate my emotional boundaries? Instead, I painted a smile on my face, took a huge swig of alcohol, and got ready to explore the Castro. Despite all the awkward trappings of this trip, once I got over the fact that there was 3 of us, not 2, I had a lot of fun. There's a lot of things you can do with 3 people that you can't do with 2. Such as, you guessed it, having a threesome with Chris and Matt, and on my birthday, no less. Happy, happy 25th birthday to me. No wonder I forgot he didn't chip in for the room. There were so many great firsts on this trip outside of the hotel room. It was my first time on a plane, first time visiting the West Coast, and the first time traveling without my family. This trip was the first time I behaved like a typical tourist on vacation. I remember standing at the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge and just staring up in awe. It was way bigger and prettier than it was in Full House. We took a ridiculous number of pictures here, in pairs, alone, and then asked another group of tourists to take a few pictures of the 3 of us. We also ensured we had them both on my digital camera and their smartphones. We repeated this scene at the house from Full House, which was smaller and less impressive than on TV. And there was a large sign on the porch that said, "Private property, keep out!" We stood outside the Ghirardelli factory patiently for way too long, the smell of chocolate wafting over us, to get a free sample. I remember walking around San Francisco Union Square and being jealous of how much prettier theirs was than ours. I was amazed at how steep the hills were and loved taking the trolley. Chris was an excellent tour guide, confidently guiding us around San Francisco to all the sights I had seen and heard about as a kid. Looking back, that's one of the things I found so attractive about him, his confidence. If he wanted to try something or do something or have sex with someone, he went for it. There was no overthinking or second guessing going on in that head. He was a confident gay man who was proudly out in all parts of his life, and I was still hiding behind the frayed shirts in my symbolic closet. The last day there, Chris and I took a ferry out to Alcatraz and walked around. It was chilly, but beautiful and peaceful. We laughed at random things, took a lot of pictures. Everything felt amazing. I remember thinking this was the best vacation I had ever been on, and for the time, it was. But all vacations come to an end. San Francisco was the last time Chris and I hooked up. I didn't realize it until a few weeks had gone by, and suddenly he was hooking up with other guys a lot, and we weren't hooking up, or even going to the gym, or doing anything even platonic friends did. I was so confused. Did I do something wrong on the trip? Finally, I knocked on his door one night. Hey, Zach, what's up? Hey, I was wondering if we could talk. Sure, what's up? Is something wrong? Yeah, I noticed things have felt different since our trip. Can we talk about it? Sure. It's important that we communicate openly and become friends. You and I know full well that conversation never happened. Instead of walking the 20 feet to his room and knocking on his door and asking what happened, I decided it would be a better idea to replay everything I had said and done, hadn't said or done, wished I had said or done over the last 6 months, trying to figure out where I made the mistake. This marked the first time I felt the fickle grains of sand that make up a gay situationship slip between my fingers. The movement of those grains of sand is utterly irrevocable. And even though I had been in plenty of relationships since then, and I'm in a very long, loving, happy, healthy one now, thinking back, it still stings. Over the years, I've gone back and forth on what explanation, if any, he owed me at the time, and what I should have said to him. We did eventually have a big passive-aggressive blowout in a fashion that only two drunk gay men in their 20s can have. What began as a practical joke, putting random kitchen items into his bedroom, quickly escalated into shouting and insults. You think you're so fucking funny, Zach, don't you? You know what? Give me back my fucking dresser, now! You think you're so fucking funny! How else was I supposed to get his attention besides putting a spatula under his pillow? And what better way to get back at someone than to demand they return the dresser you gave them 8 months ago? Our other roommate, who was a straight guy in tech, stepped in and we cooled off. The blowout eventually led to a discussion where we came to an uneasy truce, which ultimately didn't last, and eventually he moved in with someone new he was dating. On the last day in the apartment, he asked for the dresser back. And after the moving truck left, I saw that he had left it on the curb for the sanitation department to pick up. That was also where the last tatters of our friendship were before they were shipped to the landfill. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had asked more questions or had stated my needs earlier. What if I had genuinely spoken up while we were in the hotel room before his friend came? Or if I had knocked on his door when things were feeling weird and asked to talk? Or what would happen if I texted him out of the blue? I wonder what he would say if he knew I was sharing this experience with all of you. I have zero desire to get back with him or even speak to him. But losing a friendship because of miscommunication and assumption is a shame. Especially one of my earliest friendships with another gay man. Why is it so much easier to do emotional Olympics in my head than just to say what's on my mind to the person who needs to hear it?
Thank you for that beautiful reading. Great story, Zach. Hey, Carl.
Hey.
How you doing? I have a few questions for you,
All right.
too.
Shoot.
So first, in your bio, you mention you are a troubadour and a musical nomad. You grew up in Missouri and landed in Astoria as your home. So my question for you is, how did you land here? How do you define home? And were there any cities along the way that could have been your home or feel like home in any way?
Well, I spent a year of my life in Amarillo, Texas, and the best thing about that city is packing up and getting the hell out of there as soon as you can, because I lived in the Florida Keys for a little while, Texas and Missouri, but moved to New York just kind of on a whim. And one of my friends was living here, and then I just fell in love with the city in a way that I didn't even anticipate, and I still love it, even with all its chaos.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I know we've been doing questions from the cup, but I'm going to deviate from that for a little bit because I want to talk about your music, especially after that performance earlier. So beautiful, so wonderful. So, you're also like an ultra marathoner, and I have so many questions for you. Yeah, we'll talk later. But I want to know kind of how music infiltrates these other areas of your life a little bit, like your writing.
I feel like music is just ubiquitous in my whole life. I grew up, my dad played guitar, so it was around all the time. But I work on my music when I'm doing my running. I work on my music when I'm doing my traveling. I work on writing constantly. So it's just a constant in my life, and I don't really know anything different,
Yeah, I love that. Would you mind playing us maybe a little Tom
Sure,
Waits?
yeah, I'd love to. Let me grab this real quick. I have a little pick. I put it in there. There's this tiny little pocket in your blue jeans that it's good for this, but it's hard when you're seated. It's easier when you're standing. Sorry, Zach. You just have to stand up there while you fiddle in my pocket. Okay. There's a house on my block. It's abandoned and cold. Folks moved out of it a long time ago. They took all of their things and they never came back. It looks haunted with the windows all cracked. Everyone calls it the house where nobody lives. Once it held laughter, once it held dreams. Did they throw it away? Did they know what it means? Did someone's heart break? Did somebody do someone wrong?
So much. So here we go, switching it up. Here is The House Where Nobody Lives, written by Carl M. Banks and performed by Zach Rothman-Hicks.
In Peevely, Missouri, there sits a house, 678 Glenwood Drive, a prefab modular home on a concrete foundation. My parents, Chuck and Mary Ann, were the first people to move into that house. They picked it out of a large showroom somewhere in Illinois, and it was shipped to Peevely, a suburb of St. Louis, and bolted together atop a concrete basement where it still sits today. It's a ranch-style house with yellow aluminum siding and brown slotted shutters next to each window. The shutters, in direct contradiction with their name, do not shut. Purely aesthetic, they are affixed to the siding in a permanently open position. There's an in-ground pool in the backyard, a rope swing in the big oak tree, and green zoysia grass covering the 1-acre lot. Inside, guitars and various stringed instruments hung on the wall, and an upright piano sat in the living room. When my parents moved in, my older brother CJ was a newborn. A year later, they had my sister Barbie. And a year after that, they had me. Not just me, but my twin sister Cynthia, too. 4 kids in 3 years. While I'm sure it wasn't the easiest thing for my parents, having so many little ones running around, me, personally, I loved it. Having numerous siblings my age was valuable for my development as a young person. Moreover, the experience of being a twin, a boy-girl twin pair at that, offered us a unique experience on life. It's wild. There's this separate person that literally develops next to you. Two little beating hearts side by side. Then you're born, and you go through all of early life side by side. First words, first days of school, first communion, first boy-girl parties, all of it we did together. And before you ask, because everybody does, the twin telepathy thing, I can neither confirm nor deny. What I can tell you, however, is that Cynthia and I had a whole pre-planned routine worked out that was designed to make you think we had twin telepathy. She's thinking of a fork. And so it would go. We even had our own language. It was a series of nonsensical phrases we would string together with zero syntax. Abushiga, abushiga, ga 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 ga, and so on. As we all aged into adolescence and young adulthood, the house at 678 Glenwood Drive became increasingly more lively and more chaotic. A bustling center for friends, family, and the like. We couldn't lock our front door because there were always people coming in and out. Locking it would serve as a futile exercise. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighborhood friends, classmates, dad's hunting buddies, mom's hair clients would come over to smoke cigarettes and gossip while she gave them a perm. A sitcom-esque front door with a rotating cast of characters. You never knew who would be popping in at any given time. The only thing missing was the canned laughter and the applause break when people entered. On one rare occasion, I was alone coming home from high school. Having the house to myself was an oddity, and I cherished the fact that I could sit and watch TV in solitude. Happy and alone, I parked myself in front of the dining room television to watch whatever the hell I wanted. To my surprise, I heard a toilet flush. Out of the bathroom walks my friend Zach, wiping his hand on his pants and holding the Sunday Funny papers. Without skipping a beat, he says, "Have you ever read Doonesbury?" Surprised and annoyed, I said, "Dude, what the hell are you doing in our house?" And he said, I was skipping school today, and I know your front door is always open, so I stayed here all day. Plus, your mom lets us smoke cigarettes inside. That was just the type of place 678 Glenwood Drive was. One of the hard parts about having 4 kids close in age is that we seem to leave the nest all at once. In 3 years, we scattered to various college towns around Missouri. With all of the kids out of the house, it became clear that mom and dad were growing apart. This wasn't necessarily news, it's just that we had all been busy for so long that no one took the time to notice. With the filters gone, we could see their marital blemishes. My brother CJ, his pregnant wife, and 3 kids were the first to move back in with mom and dad. It was 2009 and they were upside down on a house. I wasn't long to follow, moving in to save up money before heading to New York City. In time, I saved enough and moved. CJ found a house for his family, and they moved. A year and a half later, my parents informed us they were getting divorced, and they too were moving out. Mom moved to a townhouse in the city, and Dad moved to a farmhouse in the country. The house at 678 Glenwood sat empty as they tried to sell it. Mom was doing great after the divorce, but Dad seemed down in the dumps. So I asked him to join me as a roadie for my spring tour, and he agreed, and we headed west. I played festivals, dive bars, and house shows. We rode horses, ate paella, drank whiskey, and played music. After several weeks, thousands of miles on the road, and one final 17-hour push through the night, Dad and I landed back at 678 Glenwood Drive. The difference between this and the last time I was at the house was vast. Previously, there were 7 humans and 3 generations living there. This time, on the other hand, everything was gone. Everything. save for a futon with a stained mattress and the old upright piano that was too heavy and cumbersome to move out. Strung out from the road, Dad and I crashed hard. I woke up disoriented and confused. Here I was in my childhood house. The image I see in my mind's eye when I think of the term home, but it wasn't home at all. It looked unfamiliar and foreign to me. Bare walls, empty rooms, and dents on the carpet where furniture once sat. So I stumbled down to the old piano. On it sat music to a song I'd never heard before, a Tom Waits song called The House Where Nobody Lives. It seemed my brother had been passing through Peevely for work and left the sheet music on the piano. It read, "There's a house on my block. It's abandoned and cold. Folks moved out of it a long time ago. They took all their things and they never came back. It looks haunted with the windows all cracked. And everyone calls it the house where nobody lives. Once it held laughter, once it held dreams. Did they throw it away? Did they know what it means? Did someone's heart break? Did somebody do someone wrong?" The house at 678 Glenwood Drive had become the house where nobody lived. And man, it broke my heart. I sat, played the piano, sang the song, and wept. I headed back to New York, and the house sat empty as Dad tried to sell it. 2 years went by. During one of our monthly late-night phone calls, Cynthia informed me she was moving in to 678 Glenwood. Her husband, and 2 kids. This was welcome news. Cynthia would often stress about money, and it had negative effects on her mental health. Now she was able to live rent-free, and that seemed to eliminate her noticeable growing stress. We all orbited around this place and each seemed to find our way back to the house at 678 Glenwood Drive. Once again, the house was full of life. Once again, there was a pitter-patter of little babies' feet running through the living room. When I visited in June of 2015, Cynthia was the happiest I had seen her in quite some time. Things were going well for me, too. I had just landed a weekly gig hosting a show in Brooklyn on Sunday nights. I was recording it and putting the highlights up as a podcast. Even got put in the new and noteworthy category on the Apple Podcast app. On December 20th of 2015, I left my show in Brooklyn and drove west with my drummer, returning to St. Louis for the Christmas holiday. The show had been the best one yet, and we were flying high for that long trek through the night. I was dropped off at my brother's door, where CJ and his wife prepared for family dinner. Hey, Carl, why don't you text Cynthia and ask her to come over for dinner? My sister-in-law said. Sure, I responded, pulling out my phone and firing off a short text. Why do you have me do that, if you don't mind my asking? I questioned. She responded saying, well, Barbie got some concerning texts from Cynthia and now isn't getting any response. After a few minutes, and with no reply, I calmly suggested we drive the 20 minutes to Peevely and do a wellness check on her. An unnecessary precaution, I'm sure, I thought. My brother, Mom, and I got in the car and headed down I-55. During the drive, in a flurry of texts and phone calls, we found out that Cynthia had taken her own life in our childhood home. Blindsided by the news and in near hysterics, we pulled over to assess what we were going to do. We decided to take Mom home. She just couldn't bring herself to go, and then CJ and I would continue to the house at 678 Glenwood Drive. Where was that twin telepathy when I needed it? This time, pulling up to the house was gone were the familiar cars in the driveway. In their place were unmarked police cars. The front door was wide open, and every light was on in the house. When CJ and I walked into the living room, it was full of strangers. Everyone was silent, with a somber look on their face. After what seemed like an eternity, someone spoke up, saying, "She's at the bottom of the stairs, if you'd like to say a final goodbye." One by one, we went down to see her body and say goodbye one final time. Her husband had arrived just before us, and we met him with a big hug. He told us they were going through a breakup. He was at his mom and dad's place with their kids that night, and Cynthia was alone in the house. There were used Kleenex covering the ground and 2 empty Coke cans. Cynthia had sat and cried while she tied an elaborate noose to strangle herself. She was found by our neighbor, who had lived next door forever. He had cut her down, but it was too late. A few minutes after we got there, my dad arrived too. Eventually, the coroners took the body, and we all left the house at 678 Glenwood. Driving back to my brother's house, having not slept for 2 whole days, I joked, "Well, I'm never going to that fucking house again." Nor did I plan to. I returned to New York and proceeded to have the worst couple months of my life. Dad was diagnosed with cancer. I went through a breakup with a partner I cohabitated with, and I lost my gig hosting the show Sundays in Brooklyn. When it rains, it pours, I guess. In the summer of 2016, my dad was going through chemo and still trying to sell the house at 678 Glenwood. He asked if I would come back and help open the pool, a chore we would do together every summer. I had to say yes. And even though it would spoil my plan to never return to the house, I'm glad I did. As we scrubbed the inside walls of the pool, it occurred to me that the power was not in the house. That there were still beautiful and sweet memories in the house, too. Out front, the red roses Cynthia had planted years before bloomed all on their own. Dad's cancer is now in remission, and I found a lovely place to cohabitate with my new, wonderful partner. The house eventually sold, and the final verse in the Tom Waits song goes, "If you find someone to love and someone to hold, don't trade it for silver and don't trade it for gold. I have all of life's riches and they're fine and they're good. They remind me that houses are just made of wood. And what makes a house grand ain't the roof or the door. If there is love in a house, it's a palace for sure. But without love, it's just a house where nobody lives."
Once it held laughter, once it held dreams. Did they throw it away? Did they know what it means? Did someone's heart break, or did somebody do someone wrong?
Thank you so much to our 4 storytellers tonight. Oh my gosh, these stories. to January, to Catherine, to Zach, to Paul. And to Tim and Chenda for their heart and guidance throughout the process. The story has been, this whole process has been, I know I created Know You Tell It, but this one has always been so special for me, especially to one of the pictures that I put out on the table. This is actually from my parents' anniversary album, because their first home was at 230 Dolores Street in San Francisco. And this is the cover of the single with I Left My Heart and Once Upon a Time. So everyone that knows me just knows how much that this whole night has meant to me. And thank you to everyone that's made it happen. Thank you to Grove 34 for this wonderful space. Check out their website because they have all sorts of things going on all the time. And oh my goodness, thank you so much, Bob Singleton and the Greater Astoria Historical Society for that talk. And also, this show was supported by a Queens Community Art Grant from Flushing Town Hall. And a big thank you to Natalie for Flushing Town Hall here. As well as a Queens Art Fund grant from NYFA, so we're very lucky to be supported by the Queens community. And it's extra special to have Flushing Town Hall friends here because Zach and January and Andre and Lowell and me all met this summer in July as an artist and entrepreneur program that NYFA did at Flushing Town Hall. So just I have so much information about everything, so you can just ask me. We get the email list. And also, I guess the very last thing is I hope you've been listening. I know I started off the evening by making you do a writing exercise. So, of course, as a teacher, I have to give a test at the end. And our test is in the form of story trivia. And I'm going to have Tim and Chenda help me out with this. You get the chance to win our Know You Tell It anthology, which is not only... We have a book. 10 years of stories, but also a lot of behind the scenes, in between of how we went, through the years, developing from an idea to a series. I also want to point out before we start, I don't even know if we have enough room, but Tim and I don't know if you can see it with everything. I'm going to vamp because Tim's crying. We're all crying. So Tim and I did each other's portraits here. And I just think it's so fun because my head is so small.
It goes too far away.
But then Tim's head is so big, and I feel like you have a small head and I have a big head. I don't know, but I just thought that was fun. And this, you're all welcome to stay and have another drink after and come check out how small my head is in the portrait. But what we're gonna do with this, and so Chenda, you kind of watch this side. Tim, you watch this side. We're just whoever raises their hand first. Try to source right when I ask these questions. So we're gonna go through the stories. These are all story trivia questions on the stories you just heard, so you have a fighting chance to get them right. In the first story, In Mother's Dream, there's a saying in the classical music world: if you miss one day of practice, you know it. If you miss 2 days of practice, people around you know it. What happens if you miss 3 days?
Your audience knows it.
I think this is a tie. Give them both the book. We have extras. All right, we have our first ever audio prompts. I know, right? For story trivia. So we're just if you can name anything about this song. Also from Mother's Dream. Does anybody raise their hand? Nice. Yes, give it to Mitch. Yes, Franz Schubert's I even taught Catherine how to say it, and now I'm blanking on how to say it. Catherine, what's it called?
Arpeggione sonata.
By Rostropovich. Yes. Okay, next story. In Lopsided Star, what mistake did the narrator make when sending podcasts to the literary agent she met at a pitching event?
Heartbeat.
Ashley.
Yes, she asked for heart, like stories about the heart, and then she sent all these stories about the actual heart.
Yes, the actual heart, as opposed to romance, love stories. All right, so we'll try to look on. I feel like we're cheating this side of the room. What train did the narrator take to go record Immigrant Daughter?
And train.
And train. Yes. The mighty N from Astoria to Midtown. In Head, Heart, and San Fran, what San Francisco tourist attraction was the narrator disappointed in?
Oh, here's the house from Full House.
In the back, yes, the house from Full House. And what kitchen object did the narrator? Spatula! Karen gets a book. Okay, and in the house where nobody lives, what was special about the shutters at 678 Glenwood Drive?
Oh, look, hands here.
They didn't close.
They didn't shut. Do not shut. Okay, last question. I could do this all night. I love storytelling. You get a book. You get a book. The narrator's podcast got put in what category on the Apple Podcast app?
Noteworthy. Noteworthy. New and noteworthy.
New and noteworthy. If you did not win a book, don't be sad. We have them for sale in the back. And all of the proceeds go to Tim that we sent to the book. That's my thank you for my tiny thank you. And Tim's reminding me that I forgot. Did I forget something?
How much is the book?
I don't know how much the book is. It's on the back. I think it's, who won a book? Is it on the back, Taryn?
I'm looking now.
Tim's like, how much is the book?
I don't see it, no.
I feel like it's $15.
You get a book.
But we'll negotiate. I think if you buy Tim a drink, he might give you a book. Yes. Oh, thank you so much. Yes, thank you, everybody.